All right, post game. Uh, Evil Tides of Saltmarsh Moon. There seems to be a theme lately of skipping content. It's not necessarily a bad thing. That's the beauty of Dungeons and Dragons, is that it is, by design, a non-linear game. It's the closest thing we have to Ready Player One and virtual reality, all that jazz. Yes, I know we have virtual reality, and I know that we have augmented reality, but like, it's the closest thing to really just, I want to do this. Okay, we'll do this. So these cuties right here, the Salt Boys of Saltmarsh, they went to visit the mermaids. They were excited to visit the mermaids. I think they had wanted to visit the mermaids for a long time. So they went down and they visited Queen Ondine and the mermaids of Tyria. And these mermaids were like, "We're getting our butts kicked and we need some help. And if you don't help us against the Sahaugen, they're going to finish us off and come after you stronger than ever. They have a fortress. It's got 10,000 Sahaugens in it. And what are we going to do? They have leaders. We need those leaders taken out." Now, the original adventure, the final enemy, which ironically is not the final adventure in the 5e Saltmarsh. It's really weird. Um, so the final enemy, which isn't the final enemy, is an adventure where the party is asked to, at a very low level, I think it was only like level 7 they're supposed to do this, go to this massive Sahaugen fortress that is mostly underwater and scout it out and report back. That's all they have to do. Scout it out and report back. Well, I ran my Saltmarsh games as miniature sandboxes, and there was no forced order that they had to do the content in. So by the time they were ready to do this, they were already level 11. That's significantly higher than level 6 or 7. So I changed the adventure that they needed to take out the leaders of the Sahaugans. And I gave them, like, like an assassin, like manila envelope full of like pictures. These are your targets. These are who you're trying to kill. Blah, 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 blah. Now, they've got a big group and they've got lots of Pokemon and NPCs and all that jazz. And they're like, how the hell are we going to pull this off? They didn't say that for the mermaids. They were like, of course, mermaids. Of course, we're going to do this. So I had these beautiful maps that were not provided with the adventure. A member of the community actually had to make these maps. This dungeon is so freaking big. It is so big. This is one of 3 maps for this. Now, I ain't saying it's like Dungeon of the Mad Mage big, but it's in the day and age of 3-room and 5-room dungeons. This is a big dungeon. And there are lots of Sahaugen, lots of guards, lots of slaves, because Sahaugen love to keep slaves. It's a whole thing. And somebody went and they turned the ugly black and white maps, or blue and white, whatever, that came with the adventure, and they went and made these gorgeous maps. Gorgeous. And then I, being a fool, I went and chopped them up because the maps were too high res and too big to go into Roll20. I chopped each map into 4 pieces, and then I put the maps in, and then I dynamically lit them. I did all this on stream, and it took many streams to do this. There was a lot of prep that went into this, and I told myself it's gonna be worth it because you have 2 Saltmarsh groups, so the work counts double, baby. Yeah. So my Sun group actually did journey to this dungeon, and they used diplomacy to overcome the challenge, which is pretty cool and not actually that in character for them. So I was proud of them, and I thought this was pretty neat. These guys were like, hmm, do we want to try to do an underwater dungeon that has 10,000 bad guys and could potentially take, oh, I don't know, 8 weeks, right? Because this is a big dungeon, especially if you are going to try and fight your way through it. They at no point were like, let's use diplomacy. And they at no point were like, let's be sneaky. They were just like, how are we going to get at them bosses and kill them? And they actually came up with a really awesome idea that tied the narrative of the whole campaign together, and that was to take the trident Surge. Where are you at, Surge? Surge is a handout. There he is. So they took this trident from the very beginning of the Evil Tides adventure, uh, and they were like, we'll use this to lure out the Sahaugan leaders because this is like a spiritual weapon for them, like a holy relic, right? So we'll let them know that we have it, and then they'll come and get it, and that will be that. And I was like, well, damn, that's a really good idea. So they worked with the mermaids of Tyria, and they basically sent a bunch of mermaids out who got captured and killed, more than likely. And they were messengers, and those messengers had letters that detailed that the Salt Boys of Saltmarsh were in possession of Surge, and they were transporting it to an island where they were going to sell it to like a wizrobe or a merchant or something like that. And then the party went to the island and they set up an ambush. So, fortunately, I'm on top of things. So I had an island fortress ready to go. And I was like, yeah, of course we could do that. So they came over to this island and they parked their boat, and they actually dolled up their boat to look like they had shipwrecked on the island so that they wouldn't be able to escape easily. And then they set up like a dig site where they pretended they had buried the trident, and then they set all sorts of traps and barricades and all that. It was really cool. It was really cool. And so, what we did is sort of a tower defense minigame where they just fought wave after wave of Sahaugan and Sahaugan monster. Basically, the best of what they had in the dungeon came out of the dungeon to fight them on their terms, home field advantage kind of thing. And there was a lot of like making stuff up. There was a lot of rule of cool. And then ultimately, the big boss man shows up, and he brings his lieutenants with him. And of course, all of the high priority targets that they needed were there, because that's how convenient plot works. And they were able to take him out. It was not an easy fight. This guy is the boss of all the Sahaugan, so I gave him lots of steroids. He killed the Forge Cleric, who I think in his entire career had only been hit like 3 times, so he was shook by the experience. In the end, uh, it was really cool. It was a really cool idea. It was a really cool idea, and I'm really happy that I went with the idea, that I didn't, oh, well, sure, you could try, but it doesn't work because I really want you to go to this dungeon because I spent a lot of time prepping this dungeon and reading the dungeon and planning the dungeon and dynamically lighting the dungeon, and I need you to go to the dungeon so that I feel validated with the time that I spent. Um, I have been in games where the DM would have shot down every idea we had to make sure that we went to that dungeon because that's the adventure and that's what we're playing. Um, you can't order chicken nuggets because this restaurant doesn't serve chicken nuggets, kind of deal. Doesn't matter how bad you want them. Doesn't matter if you're willing to help make them. Doesn't matter. We're not having it. This is what we're having for dinner. Um, yeah. So I didn't want to be that DM, right? I wanted to say, yeah, okay, this is a brilliant idea. Let's lean into it. Let's see what happens. And then it sort of turned into this, tower defense minigame, which eventually turned into this dramatic boss battle. And ultimately they were successful. And I hope that they were exceedingly proud of themselves because I showered them with praise for their brilliant idea and execution of plan. And it was a great reminder to me as a DM that everyone at the table, even the virtual table, right? Everyone at the table is there telling a story. And as the DM, you do want to listen for the storytelling from your players, because sometimes they will have these brilliant ideas or these wacky, crazy, fun ideas that take things in a direction that you didn't anticipate. And sometimes it could hurt to have an entire dungeon skipped. But this was better. This was way better than running another dungeon. So I'm very thankful that they came up with that cool idea and that we went in this different direction with it. And now I have a huge dungeon that is underwater that I could use for another campaign if I need to. No big deal. So, the memories of this incredible ambush slash trap that they laid for the Sahaugen leaders and the cool fights that took place over the relic. I'm always going to remember this stuff. So, very happy with it.